This is the Economic Club of Florida, a distinguished platform for discussion of the major national issues of the day. On today's program, Katie Yeutter of the Florida Chamber of Commerce on a new effort to improve mental health and substance abuse issues in the workplace and beyond.
If we're walking into the workplace every day and we're distracted by depression, anxiety, nervousness, we've got a kid with addiction, right? We are distracted and we're driving heavy machinery. We're, expecting to keep our team members safe and making sure we're safe, right? And so what we have to do is go beyond just the tactics of talking at people of this is what OSHA requires, this is the law, and here's the training that's required to do it, and address it more at the human impact level.
Good day and welcome to the 569th in our series of distinguished speaker programs. I'm Harvey Bennett for the Economic Club of Florida. Improving workplace safety is taking a whole new meaning in the 2020s, and it's the focus of our program today. We're very happy to have with us Katie Yeutter, President of the Florida Chamber Leadership Cabinet, which includes its Safety Council. The council is part of the Florida Chamber of Commerce, and Ms. Yeutter has a dual role as the Chamber's Chief Operating Officer and Chief Financial Officer as well. Katie, welcome.
Thank you so much, Harvey. It's a privilege to be here.
Well, tell us a little bit about what you are going to share with the club today.
Oh, absolutely. So what we're going to be talking about today has a lot to do with safety, health, and sustainability. So we are a business-led initiative that is focused on becoming the safest, healthiest, and most sustainable state in America. And really, most importantly, is set the standard for the nation. So when we say safest, it's our tactical safety training. It's going into organizations, helping them get certified, internalizing why safety matters. When we talk about healthiest, it's those long-term systemic issues that if we don't start addressing, we won't be able to train our way out of. Very focused on mental wellness, opioids, and preventative health programs, as well as marijuana. And then sustainability, cleaner air, cleaner land, and cleaner water, right? You can't have any of those without the other. And so we're very focused on that. And what we're going to be talking about today is why that matters to business in Florida, the economic impact and the impact to GDP if we don't start focusing on this and getting it right.
Well, before I ask you for a tease of that economic impact, these certainly sound like issues that go beyond what we might think is the typical workplace training, safety programs. How are you going to do that?
So it's really going to come through those long-term systemic issues. It comes down to mental well-being in a lot of cases. So you hear a lot about distracted driving, right? And we look at the physical device as distraction. But if we're walking into the workplace every day and we're distracted by depression, anxiety, nervousness, we've got a kid with addiction, right? We are distracted and we're driving heavy machinery. We're, expecting to keep our team members safe and making sure we're safe, right? And so what we have to do is go beyond just the tactics of talking at people of this is what OSHA requires, this is the law, and here's the training that's required to do it, and address it more at the human impact level. It's a culture impact, it's a mental health impact on how we get people to internalize why this stuff matters, to really focus on the whole person, because ultimately that's where we're going to get people to be fully present in their jobs, in their roles, that they're monitoring their surroundings, but ultimately they're monitoring the surroundings of even their team members, right? And making sure that they're calling out if they're not being safe, right? But for us, it's not about regulation. It's not about law. It's about working with organizations on how you build that culture and get people to internalize why these things matter.
And this all does have an economic impact on the state of Florida, doesn't it?
Absolutely, right? Our workforce, we have a workforce shortage right now. Everybody is talking about workforce. 59% of our workforce right now is stating they are feeling some level of nervousness, anxiety, worry, right? So think about that. 59% are walking into your workplaces every day. If they're feeling nervous, anxious, are they fully present in the work that they're doing for you?
Good point. Katie Yeutter of the Florida Chamber Leadership Cabinet, including its Safety Council, thank you. We're looking forward to hearing your upcoming address and discussion on Anything is Possible, why Florida's business leaders are making Florida the safest, healthiest, and most sustainable state in America. Now, here's Club Board Member Jim Murdaugh, President of Tallahassee Community College, with our formal introduction.
So I get the privilege to introduce today a remarkable leader and a remarkable person in our state that is doing really, really important work during this very special month. So let me tell you a little bit about Katie Yeutter. She's the CEO and CFO of the Florida Chamber of Commerce and president of the Florida Chamber Leadership Cabinet on safety, health, and sustainability. Katie's dual-focused perspective as a leader promotes member education and spearheads action to achieve enterprise results. Her drive to envision and actualize new possibilities to fuel organizational growth and continuous improvement has remained a constant throughout her career and her life. She's a 6-time full-distance Ironman finisher, 2-time half Ironman finisher, who also summited Mount Kilimanjaro. Katie never stops striving for excellence in everything she does, and in 2022, Influence magazine named her one of their most influential people in Florida politics. She's an active member of the Young Presidents Organization, a global leadership community of over 30,000 leaders in 142 countries, and she was recently accepted into the Harvard Kennedy School Leaders Program. Bill Yergin, a CEO of Florida's Correct Craft, says Katie Yeutter is one of a kind leader. She exhibits strong intuition and strategic skills while also driving excellent operational results. She holds herself to a high standard while motivating her team to reach their potential. Any organization would be better with Katie. Katie has spearheaded bold new initiatives that have led to year after year record-breaking revenue results for the Florida Chamber, while expanding the Chamber's ability to help make Florida one of the nation's safest, healthiest, and most sustainable states. She leads internal operations and strategic planning for a parent organization of 17 nonprofit and for-profit entities, including the Safety Council, the Health Council, and the Sustainability Council. She oversees financial management, revenue generation, accounting, and human resources across the Florida Chamber. She created the leadership cabinet structure and operations from the Florida Safety Council, building motivated teams and policies to strengthen the organization's ability to meet key performance indicators. She built an advisory board of senior executives from Disney, Coca-Cola, Advent Health, and other global industry leaders. And she created a robust educational division featuring a national leadership webinar series, including a 30-hour OSHA-sanctioned training program, mental health awareness workshops for HR professionals, and an internal chamber university to provide employee training opportunities, career pathing, and coaching. She also developed the Florida Leadership Conference on Safety, Health, and Sustainability, featuring high-profile industry expert speakers with over 600 business leaders participating over the course of the 3 years. And I could go on, folks, but she obviously has a lot of time on her hands to come and speak to the Economic Club of Florida. With that, would you please give a great Economic Club of Florida welcome to Katie Yeutter.
Thank you so much, Jim, for that introduction. Thank you, Marion. Thank you, trustees and members, for having me here with you today. I've been here actually 3 years. I left Wisconsin, grew up a farm girl, much like Ken did, milking the cows, and the weather is much nicer in Florida than it is in Wisconsin. So thank you so much for having me today. I'm very excited to talk to you about the opportunity behind safety, health, and sustainability and why this has become a priority for the Florida business community. As you heard Frank, and I don't mean to repeat some of these numbers, but the Florida Chamber is strategized behind uniting business for good to secure Florida's future. And as you heard Frank talk about going from the 16th largest economy to 10th largest economy by 2030, and that is the 2030 blueprint by the Florida Chamber Foundation. That is all aligned behind those 39 goals that Frank talked about. That's all measured through our scorecard and our zip code level data. So again, not to be repetitive of Frank, 2.9 million net new residents, 1.4 million net new jobs, 40 million more annual visitors, and 2.5 million more drivers on the road. So to grow the right way and make sure that the right things are happening in Florida, given the growth that we're going to see in those areas, The one goal that I'm going to focus on today to talking about of those 39 is becoming the top 5 state for well-being. Currently number 20, but improving. And how we plan to accomplish that is through the Florida Chamber Leadership Cabinet on Safety, Health, and Sustainability. Become the safest, healthiest, and most sustainable state in America, and most importantly, to set the standard for the nation on safety, health, and sustainability. Our leadership cabinet is comprised of 20 board members that are global leaders throughout the world on all things safety, health, and sustainability, many of which are not even located in Florida, but run global operations across the world. Our Safety Council is focused on making Florida the safest state in America, and that focuses on all of our tactical safety trainings, our OSHA trainings, our lockout, tagout. Our Florida Chamber Health Council is focused on long-term systemic issues that if we don't start addressing, we won't be able to train our way out of. Very focused on mental well-being, focused on our opioid epidemic, preventative health programs, and marijuana. And the Florida Chamber Sustainability Council, cleaner air, cleaner water, and cleaner land. So I'm going to share a lot of numbers and a lot of data. This is the Florida Economics Club, after all. So the Florida ranks currently 32nd in the U.S. for lost time non-fatal worker comp claims per 1,000 workers. This is an industry mix adjusted number, putting every state on an equal playing field. So that puts us 32nd out of 50 states. Florida's estimated GDP loss from lost time claims, and this is most recent data of 2021. Lost time claims, we had 70,633 in 2021. Our average lost time days were 8, which is a national number. Average GDP per worker per day in Florida is costing us $519, and with the amount of workers in Florida in 2021, it was roughly 9.3 million. Lost GDP due to lost time claims were $293 million for the state of Florida. Now that number could be higher than $293 million because we now know 13% of workers do not return to work after a lost time injury, as well as making lower wages as well. So that number could actually be a lot bigger than what we have up there. Florida reported 52,852 non-COVID related worker comp claims in 2022, which is down from the 60,353 non-COVID related claims in 2021. The average cost for claims in Florida at a 30-month average maturity to account for the full length of care and service was $48,000, higher than the U.S. median of $46,000. Florida is still trending at a higher rate against the median, which is going down at a rate about 2.4, meaning costs aren't coming down at the same rate as in other places. So Florida is coming down roughly at a 0.6. With the cost of all claims being higher, our total employer costs of workers' comp per $100 of covered wages are higher as well. Florida is 78 cents per $100 of covered wages as opposed to the U.S. average of 68 cents per $100 of covered wages. Worker comp claims per 1,000 workers by industry. This is standardized by the size of industry to put it all on a level playing field. Our top 3 worker comp claims by 1,000 workers are mining, with second being transportation, warehousing, and utilities, and lastly, professional and business services. The graph there to the right, you can see the decline on the median of 2.4 and where Florida is declining at roughly 0.6. At 3.38, Florida workplace fatalities of per 100,000 workers over time, which we're measuring from 2011 to 2021, is under the national average of 3.41, but has been trending up over time from 2011. Florida had 315 workplace fatalities in 2021, up from the 275 in 2020. 2020, everybody, I think, was very focused on workplace safety with the COVID impact, as well as a lot less people working. And so we did see a decline in workplace fatalities in 2020. But we have surpassed 2019 fatality numbers of 306. Adjusted for industry mix, Florida ranks 42nd for workplace fatality rates out of 50. Workplace fatalities by one-digit event, our top 3 are transportation, falls, slips, trips, and violence and injuries by persons or animals. So going back to when we talk about our 2030 blueprint and the additional drivers that we're going to be having on the roads. We've kind of heard the term transportation come up several times now, both from a non-fatal as well as fatal standpoint. Florida workplace fatalities by two-digit industry. Top 3, construction, administrative and waste services. An important note there is that does include landscaping and transportation and warehousing. When we adjust for the industry size per 1,000 workers to create equilibrium on that, the average annual workplace fatalities adjust, and agriculture and forestry are now our number 1, construction number 2, and transportation and warehousing number 3. There's been a lot of factors that we can maybe contribute to some of those increases and where we rate nationally on non-fatal workplace injuries as well as fatal workplace injuries. This slide, I think, says a lot to what can be going on in the workplace that's driving a lot of that data and information. On the top left there, you see unintended, you can't quite see, it's very small, I'm so sorry. So unintended overdoses is on a dramatic upswing. When you look at Florida age-adjusted drug overdoses, that includes intentional and unintentional, but 90% of that is unintentional. What's also important to note on those 2 graphs, when we say unintentional overdoses, that number, those are actually happening in the workplace and while people are on the job. So that does not account for outside of the workplace. But then we can also see opioid prescription rates per 100 people over time is at an all-time low from 2006. So if we're going to accomplish being the safest, we can go into organizations, we can teach OSHA, we can teach training and lockout tagouts, restraints 6 feet or above on OSHA. But if we don't address the long-term systemic issues that we just talked about, we can never get to safest, right? So we have to start addressing some of the long-term systemic issues that are driving a lot of the data on our safety side. Mental well-being being one, opioids, which we just saw the data behind that, as well as preventative health programs and marijuana. So to create the impact to move the needle on this, we very recently, in May, to respond to the need, we launched the Florida Chamber Health Council under the Florida Chamber Leadership Cabinet, which is our new business-led mental health, mental wellness initiative. We've brought Dr. Navy Bob onto the team to lead this initiative underneath the Leadership Cabinet. So first, looking at really the national perspective on the mental health crisis right now. 1 in 5 U.S. adults experience mental illness. 1 in 20 U.S. adults experience serious mental illness. 17% of youth 16 to 17 experience a mental health disorder. Depression and anxiety disorders are currently costing the global economy $1 trillion each year in lost productivity. Recently, at our annual leadership conference on safety, health, and sustainability, we had a large focus on mental health and mental well-being. 85.2% of our survey respondents said they or know someone who has suffered from a mental health crisis. And it affects all ages. So in U.S. adolescents, which will be 12 to 17, 1 in 6 experienced a major depressive episode, 3 million had serious thoughts of suicide, 31% increase in mental health-related emergency department visits. In young adults, which we categorize as 18 to 25, 1 in 3 experienced a mental health illness, 1 in 10 experienced a serious mental illness, and 3.8 million had serious thoughts of suicide. It is the leading cause of death in the U.S., second among people ages 10 to 14, third among people aged 15 to 24, and 12th overall. So where is Florida when compared to where we are in a national landscape? Right now, Florida ranks 49th in the U.S. for access to care for mental health. We have 633 untreated adults, 116 untreated youth, and 1,343 Floridians waiting for help. The U.S. Census Bureau has started doing a household pulse survey every year since COVID. Feelings of nervousness, anxiousness, or on the edge, 59%. Not being able to stop or control worrying, 51%. Little interest or pleasure in doing things, 49%. And you can read that, but you get the point. Why does this matter, right? If 59% of Floridians are feeling nervous, anxious, or on the edge, those are those individuals that make up our workforce. They're coming into our organizations, and we're expecting them to have high productivity, be good members of the team, focused on what they're doing, and most importantly, keeping themselves safe and keeping their team members safe at the same time. A patient with major depressive disorder, we'll call it MDD, missed 6.97 days of work more than a non-MDD patient. Depression interferes with a person's ability to complete a physical job task about 20% of the time and reduces cognitive performance about 35% of the time. When you look, and I apologize it's so small, but the top left chart there will show you the top line is a non-MDD and the bottom line is MDD. That difference is about 6.3%, right? The estimate of Florida adults with MDD is 1.4 million. If we address that gap of 6.3%, we will add 89,000 full-time workers back into the workforce. And so as you heard from Frank, we talk about workforce shortage, getting more people into our economy, into our organizations to address that. Here's an opportunity that we can utilize to help move the economy forward in Florida. So, 2, continue to advance our statewide business-led mental health initiative. We will be leading an independent, nonpartisan, data-driven, and trusted policy program that creates systemic changes so all people can obtain effective, efficient behavioral health care when and where they need it. And we will be addressing that through key stakeholders guided by 7 strategic principles which are listed up above. Improve state and federal level policy, develop local behavioral health systems, improve university leadership capacity for mental and brain health, help funders of care implement best practices, change public awareness to improve access to effective care, identify, share, and promote outcome-driven strategies to the population-level best practices to scale for children, veterans, smart justice, and critical needs across lifespan, and advance health equity to reduce mental health disparities. This is what our current mental health care system looks like. It very much addresses it in a very separate and siloed approach. How we're addressing the physical side is very much separate from how we're addressing it from the mental wellness, mental health side. So you're living your life, right? We go to work, we go to home, we have school, we've got kids. Healthcare is addressing really those physical needs side of things, the primary care, the secondary care, inpatient care, right? Best practices anchors. On the mental health care, a lot of that then happens through when it gets to the point of crisis. We're seeing that come through in law enforcement, ER hospital visits, and jail, and our corrections institutions. And then from there, it's a very fragmented care on specialty care, primary care, and best practice boutique, but are handled in very much a segregated and separate way. The ideal system to which we are going to be working to achieve in Florida to get better outcomes for all Floridians, this is the ideal mental health care system. So whether we're talking about work, we're talking about school, being at home, kids, healthcare and mental health care integrate and is part of whole person care as opposed to 2 separate and distinct issues being dealt with. So on the specialty care side, we have outpatient rehabilitation, inpatient, best practice anchor, and it's the same on the mental health care, but they're handled very much in concert with one another in our everyday lives as opposed to separate and distinct. And finally, our Florida Chamber Leadership Cabinet is our business-led initiative around cleaner air, cleaner water, and cleaner land. We're going to continue to dig deeper into this. These are some preliminary numbers that the board has been working around to how can we better partner with organizations and businesses to really move the needle on all things sustainability in the state, from being a good steward of our environmental resources and moving the needle on sustainability. So with that, I guess I will open it up for questions, Marion.
Right. Any questions from the audience?
Well, first of all, thank you for an outstanding presentation. As a psychologist who's worked in a psychiatric hospital for 32 years, we have all known this. And I really want to do a shout out to the Florida Chamber for taking this on and recognizing how critical this is as we move forward in making sure that we have the best prepared and the most productive citizens that we possibly can. Florida has always tried to get by on the cheap when it comes to mental health. Mm-hmm. As you said in your statistics, we're number 49. What do you see as the major challenges in helping us to change that? We cannot stay at 49 if we're going to make meaningful impact dealing with mental health.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the question. And, so all of this, again, comes back to what Frank talks about in the vision of what Mark has done at the Florida Chamber around our 2030 blueprint goals, right? If we want to move to the 10th largest economy by 2030, right, this is absolutely a component that we have to address. A lot of this is going to come through on those 7 strategic priorities, so I don't have a direct answer for you at this time. Would love to welcome you into that work that we're doing to get input from you on how we're asking the right questions, first of all, to get to the right solutions. Part of this work that we're doing, we're working with a National Policy Institute firm that is going to help us move this forward. So they've done a lot of this work in Texas currently. They've moved tremendous efforts in Texas and improved the outcomes and the impact in Texas. So what we're doing is we're trying to look at what has worked in other states and then looking at how those types of principles have worked that can be applied to Florida, and then what does Florida have to do from the uniqueness of who we are, right, to continue to move that. So what we're going to be looking at is how is this mental wellness system for outcomes being funded, both from a state level, a federal level, and across the board. And so we'll be looking at all of that structural component to this, not only how is it set up and how Floridians move through the system, all the way down to schools, and as well as when you get up, further, we went through all age groups, right? And so how is the state currently set up in trying to address this problem? How is the insurance industry trying to address this problem? And then you've got the healthcare sector trying to address the problem, and then you have the schools, right, also, in the mix here, right? So it's a big task, right? And so spot on, Larry, that's exactly the question we're trying to answer, right? And what we're going to do is get all of those stakeholders around the table to figure out how it's currently set up and then how do you make it better, right, to ultimately get better outputs, right? So, Larry, I'll be calling you, but looking forward to working with you on this because we certainly don't have all the answers yet.
This is to kind of piggyback off Larry. I had a very personal experience with this. 2 months ago, I walked out of St. John's Church on a Sunday to the parking lot and I had a 50-minute conversation with someone who was clearly experiencing what I would term mental distress. And I was completely powerless, right? Because if somebody has a broken leg, you drive them to TOC, right? If they're hungry, you take them to Whole Foods and get them food. I had no clue what to do. And everybody had left the church. Do you call the police? You don't know what to do. And I have had conversations with a few of you and others in town. It was an eye-opening experience because you literally have no clue how to even approach this, right? How do we think about working with businesses and people across the state of what resources are in place to actually, when there is a crisis, do something? Because, I pretty resourceful person and my Eagle Scout training didn't do anything, right?
Oh, thank you. Thank you for that question. Your name was? Blake. Yep. No, thank you for that question. And I think, the situation we're in right now, we have to address the short-term immediate tactics for people that are suffering or need help, right? As well as addressing the long-term system on how we're going to get better long-term outcomes through this, right? And so right now we have to work up and down that spectrum. And so through the Health Council, one of our board members actually is Chief Carl Metzger. He is the Chief of Police at UCF. Sorry, Chris, not UF, at UCF, right? And he has seen 3 suicides in the last 6 or 8 months, and that's never happened at his tenure at UCF. And so working with Navy Bob, who's leading our Health Council, we're going to be putting some immediate trainings into the workplace that we're working with some experts on how we can equip people to have those basic conversations when you come into those situations when you come out of church, right? And so we have to kind of address all the way up be able to identify at what point of crisis they're in, right? Is this just a conversation that you can help them, or do you need to actually seek some sort of crisis intervention immediately, right? And so we have to better equip people to understand that, recognize that, and identify that. We're working with Chief Metzger. There are trainings for that we'll get certified in to be able to offer those types of things immediately. We're also working with Dr. Carolyn Leaf. If you haven't heard of her, she has been a neuroscientist for over 40 years. She's from South Africa. She's partnering with us on this initiative to offer some of those trainings right out of the gate here very, very quickly. So she's written a lot of literature. She wrote Cleaning Up Your Mental Mess. And I think when you hear Carol and Dr. Leaf speak, right, it's very empowering to hear that it's okay to be a mess, right? And when you give people that permission, I don't know if that's the right word, right, to say, it's okay not to be okay, right? And, mental health, mental wellness is a condition of being human, right? So it doesn't matter. Everybody deals with it. We all have levels of trauma, whether it's a 1 or whether it's a 10. Everybody in this room has been through a level of trauma. If you were alive and around on this earth in 2020 and we were going through COVID, there was some degree of trauma with that. It may have been a 1, right? If it was just you were worried about uncertainty of the schools and your kids and all of that, it wasn't maybe a direct impact that you could say, but it was uncertainty. Right? And uncertainty is toxic. We can call that trauma. And then you have all the way up to a level of 10 where, you couldn't be with a loved one in the hospital when they passed away, right? So I think we can start having these conversations by creating an equal playing field for everybody. And I think without having people to be so vulnerable about very personal stories, we can start with saying we've all had trauma. Now, how do you deal with trauma? Because we've all been through COVID. Right? And so very excited to work with Dr. Leaf on this. She very much believes in mind-brain connection and how we go about, connecting the mind, the brain, and the body. And so if you train your mind, it can affect your brain through the neurocycle pathways, which can get you better emotional reactions as well as physical ailments that can come through a mental wellness. But one of the things we'll be doing the trainings, we're actually going to be doing a public documentary series with PBS, actually. I'm going to create awareness around this. I'm going to be attempting to, I'll knock on wood now here, if that's right, the English Channel next July. And we're going to be using that to talk about how you train your mind, right, to train your body to get, physical outcomes. And so we'll be working with some of the best and the brightest minds on how you train your mind and you overcome things and you build resiliency, right? And so that's one avenue. But that was a really long, Blake, answer to your question. Hopefully it answered it.
You've been listening to Katie Yeutter, President of the Florida Chamber Leadership Cabinet and its Safety Council, speaking before the Economic Club of Florida on June 6, 2023 in Tallahassee, Florida. For more information on the Chamber's efforts, visit flchamberleadershipcabinet.com. The Economic Club of Florida promotes interest and enlightenment on important economic, political, and social issues of the day. To learn more, including how to become a member, visit our website at economic-club.com. This program was recorded at the Florida State University Alumni Center in Tallahassee, Florida.